Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Right Time, a Wave original presented by Perplexity. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. Also, check us out at Supercast, ad-free, the right time, $5 a month, plus bonus features like a Ask Me Anything and the likes. Go ahead and check that out. It is that time of week where we have a guest join us. Check them out First Things First on Fox Sports 1 and the What's Right podcast. It feels like this year has been the year of Nick Wright. We got another Chiefs Super Bowl, but then they got their asses kicked. But then you got Luka and LeBron on the same team.
It's a shame they couldn't have played the Lions. Then they would have three-peated and dog-walked that team.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
That team, God, I was looking forward to that. Unfortunately, you guys couldn't make it through a half of the playoffs. But yeah, sorry to interrupt, Tybo.
No, you're right. No, I do feel like, though, if there was any conclusion I would have come to after the Super Bowl was coming across a team that had the level of talent that the Lions or the Eagles had, they would have whooped the Chiefs' asses too.
Yeah, except the Lions' level of talent was entirely on the offensive side of the ball or in the training room. So, yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think the Lions' defense was going to have those successes. But you're right in that I needed a pick-me-up post-Super Bowl as the Chiefs had to settle for just being tied for the greatest 3-year stretch in the history of the NFL. So, my favorite player of all time has joined his team, my second favorite player of all time, and now they might win the championship. So, yeah, it's all good. Good to talk to you. Sorry I haven't been able to come on earlier. I'm glad we're finally able to do it.
No, you finally moved into the 21st century and moved your podcast operation into your house, which thereby made it logistically possible for us to do this thing.
Yeah, this is true. But the downside of it being in my house is it seems like the house next door to me is getting reconstructed. So hopefully that's not bleeding over into your guys' audio. But yeah, we did the podcast from my wife's store in Harlem for 3 years. It is now in the house. I was, if you take the wide shot of what's behind me, you're going to notice a lot of blank space. And that is because I left blank space to put up the latest Chiefs win the Super Bowl newspapers. Unfortunately, that's going to have to wait another year. So that's, that was a planning error, I guess, when I was developing. I was like, well, because they were like, don't you want to fill up the background? I'm like, well, that'll be silly because we're going to have all of the three-peat stuff to put up there. Sadly, we do not.
Look, the thing about that game was, and this ain't even shade, this was just one of those, right? It didn't take long to tell that this one was really probably not going to turn around. And I had all kinds of people hit me up and be like, yo, you need to find out how Nick's doing. I'm like, I know how Nick's doing. A real friend like myself, I ain't even talked to you about that Super Bowl until now. I didn't think it was appropriate to bring up before then. You're not real friends at your job. They was wearing your ass out for 2 hours.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I appreciate that you didn't reach out to me. And here's the thing to anyone watching right now that happens to be someone who reached out to me during or in the days after that game. If you have not reached out to me since then, I never saw what you sent me because I will check now. I don't know if this will show up on the camera, but what you're going to see is 485 unopened text messages. And that not unresponded to, unopened. And I'm not on group chats. That's just people that texted me at a time that I wasn't prepared to read what they had to say. And if they haven't texted me since then, that shit'll just forever be unknown. So so I can't tell you in the last few weeks how many people have texted me. And when I've gone to it, I'm like, oh, they sent me something during the Super Bowl. Like, oh, and a lot of them were sorry, hope you're doing okay. Some of them were a little shit talking, and the people who were shit talking during it, most of those people will never be responded to ever again. That's about as dirty as it gets, but whatever. We move on. We can talk hoops. This is, I'm mourned it properly.
I agree with you about these guys though who just pop up at the end like that. and you ain't heard from him in who knows how long. You ain't heard from him since. Those are some suckers. Like I am.
Yes.
Like you talked about this. I thought you made a good point that the old takes exposed dude kind of scared people for being wrong, and that it's silly. I think you're right. But anybody that ever snitches on me to him gets immediately blocked, because what a sucker move. Right? You want to do it yourself. But if I ain't never heard from you and all you want to do is come and talk to me about me being wrong about something, nah, man, there's a fungus among us.
I couldn't agree more. Also, I don't think, and I've said this before, so we don't have to spend a ton of time on it. There is no obligation. The idea that you have an obligation to get predictions correct means you have an obligation to be a soothsayer, to be able to see. You have an obligation to get reporting correct. But people, I still to this day get sent to me almost every time Tatum has a big game that going into that draft, I had him as the 5th best player in the draft. And people I think want me to be embarrassed by that. I'm like, man, I don't fucking know what you think how I'm supposed to react to any of that. Like, oh, I thought that Josh Jackson out of Kansas was way better than he is, evidently. And I thought Markelle Fultz was going to be awesome. Yeah, check that one in the wrong column and keep it moving.
So I want to ask you this, though. You mentioned, I had forgotten to even mention this when I asked you what you wanted to talk about. The Luka and LeBron thing. You and I both thought when it first happened, though, that they would not be able to guard a soul. But little did we know that J.J. Redick apparently is Larry Brown. He appears to be coaching his ass off. I think I feel good about that. Good for him. You know what I mean? But this has gone better than I thought that it would.
So I thought it would go great offensively. And I thought Chuck and others who were like, LeBron's not going to be able to play without the ball. LeBron can play whatever the team needs from him. LeBron can be one of the best players in the league at that role. People are like, he's always had the ball. Well, there has been precisely 2.5 years, his entire career, up until them trading for Luka, where there was ever even a close debate about could we get a better possession with someone else having the ball than with LeBron? And that was his first 2.5 years in Miami. So it's like, well, he's only ever done this. It's because it's what his team has always demanded. You mentioned the defensive piece of it. I also always believed that it was not that LeBron all of a sudden lost the ability to be a good defender. LeBron has lost the ability to have the energy to be great on both ends for sustained periods of time by getting Luka and putting the ball in Luka's hands where LeBron actually gets to rest on some offensive possessions. He then can pay more attention defensively. I also think you get a more engaged LeBron James whenever he thinks, wait, we can win the championship. Now, obviously, this all gets a little derailed by the injury, and now they're going to fall some in the standings. But, we'll see. It could be the blessing in disguise, so to speak, and this is no disrespect to the Thunder, who absolutely can win the championship. But if you ask the Lakers, hey, would you rather be the 2 seed and in round 2 face Denver, or the 4 seed and in round 2 face Oklahoma City? I think they would say, yeah, we'll take our chances as the 4 seed. And so, and I think that's probably the way this ends up playing out.
Okay. I want to put a pin in that do you want to play Oklahoma City or Denver thing, because to me, I agree that you do not want to play Denver, but I think we have different rationales on that. Okay. But I think with the Lakers, or that I did not think LeBron would play as well off the ball simply because he's a human being. And I am surprised at how well he has handled the idea that in the middle of the night, they woke up and told him, hey, we're giving the team to this guy. I do not know if I would have handled that nearly as well as he has managed to handle it, especially as the man who's been the center of attention for 20 years. I did not think that he would deal with that. Like I thought when Kevin Durant went to play with the Warriors and the arguments were made, well, Steph will be just fine with that. I'm like, yeah, we'll see about that. And it was a little rocky. There were ups and downs in that because what do you know? Steph Curry is an actual human being, and it's a little bit difficult when you bring in another number one type guy when you're the number one guy. It wasn't that easy for Dwayne Wade in Miami when they made that move. LeBron has seamlessly moved over to doing this. Like, he's the rare guy who means it, where it's like, cool, a little bit less for me to do. I appreciate getting a little time
and
off.
I think
he seems to actually believe it.
So and not that I want to steal any credit from LeBron, but to be fair, I think he maybe would not have handled this nearly as well at any other place in his career. I think it's easiest to handle it when you're 40, when you're in year 22. And when I also think what really helped is they traded for the one super duper star in this league who, since he came into the league, has been adamant, I'm a LeBron guy. I think he's the best player ever. I modeled my game after him. He's my basketball idol. He is, if you remember, LeBron said on the record to Channing and Richard on their pod years ago that Luka was the guy, the only guy he ever tried to sign to a LeBron James shoe deal. There isn't, the way there's Team Jordan, there isn't Team LeBron. That is probably maybe the only thing left Jordan has in the GOAT debate, but set that aside. He said it because Luka, he's always loved Luka and the way Luka plays, and that's kind of, LeBron's own ego playing there, because he loves the way Luka plays because Luka plays like him. There's no one in the league.
He reminds me a lot of myself.
Reminds me a lot of me. And so I think that helps. And I also think that LeBron having all of a sudden become, the last few years, a knockdown spot up shooter is the other reason this helps, is because earlier in his career, when he was a shakier 3-point shooter, it wouldn't make as much sense for him to be off the ball. But now, when he shoots the same from three as Steph, again, slightly different degree of difficulty and volume of shots, but the percentages are the percentages. I don't think he minds it as much.
I will throw this out there, though, that when you go to the advanced statistical profile, even since he's gotten to the Lakers, the Luka numbers are not good. I find that to be interesting. The most interesting statistical thing going in the NBA is LeBron James on-off numbers, which skewed to imply that the Lakers have been better all year long with LeBron off the court. ESPN had a very interesting article about this, though, where they seem to attribute it to outlier three-point percentages, both when he's on the floor and when he's off the floor, that the Lakers have a lower three-point percentage against when he's off and an unreally high one when he's on the floor. There may be an argument that it doesn't have to do with him.
So there was another reason, because this pre-Luka trade, the numbers were even worse. And I thought it would, to me, and my theory from watching the Lakers before that article had come out, actually, when this was kind of a bubbling story, was another thing, which is the Lakers pre-Luka trade simply could not defend when Anthony Davis was off the court, and 100% basically of the non-AD minutes, LeBron was on the court. He was not getting, because JJ was staggering LeBron and AD as much as one could, and so he was not getting the benefit of AD's defense. Now they remade themselves defensively when AD got hurt before the trade, and they've been able to carry that over to a degree.
Yeah, no, them being the second best team in the West with this, because the thing I give JJ is, JJ has something that coaching has seemed to be missing for a little while, a big old gigantic ego. And you need one of those to really walk in the way that he has walked in with the team that he has walked in to try to handle, right?
Yeah.
He's been that guy, and it's gone incredibly well. What I want to see happen in the postseason, though, is when people come out there and start hunting Luka, then what do we have? Because we're going to see a lot of that. And that's the thing. Everything in the playoffs comes down to one thing that helps the Lakers. Really, who are your two best players? Maybe three. And then from there, who can we hunt out, right? Everybody switches everything. Who can we go and make play defense? That's the part, especially since the Lakers have one dude on the team that's taller than me.
Well, there's that part's real. It's also why OKC is a unique matchup, because OKC really only has the one guy who has, the credibility, if you will, or the ability to be like, they don't have multiple guys that can go hunting. It's really just Shea. Yeah. But also it does feel like Shea could average 40 a game against the Lakers in a series because they don't have someone who can really guard the point of attack. But the flip side to that is also true. Aside from Boston, there isn't a team in the league that has multiple elite wing stoppers. Like the Nuggets got Aaron Gordon for a playoff series against a LeBron James or a Luka. Nobody has a team where it's like, okay, Aaron Gordon is on LeBron James. Who is on Luka? Like the fact that, and so I think that's going to be super interesting in a series where for Luka or LeBron, for the first time in their basketball lives, one of them is not going to be being guarded by that team's primary wing defender because he's going to be on the other guy and what that's going to mean in these matchups.
Now, I still question if Oklahoma City's a guy short. They have
I think that's fair.
One guy. Yeah, I think they got one guy that's go get us a bucket, and that one guy is a foul merchant.
That's the other thing. So I'm a little worried that not for the same reasons, but in a same way that we have seen Embiid and Harden's playoff numbers dip significantly. Now it didn't happen last year to Shea, to his credit. Now, but They only made, they lost in round 2. Are some of Shea's numbers going to dip to a degree because he's not going to get the regular season whistle, and the guys historically who have had these unreal numbers in part because of these unreal free throw rates, Embiid and Harden primarily, we saw that not carry over every postseason. So I think that's a fair question. I also think OKC, listen, they're awesome and they could win the championship. I'm not discounting them, but their hope was and is that their second best players will be Chet Holmgren. He's not there yet. Like Jalen Williams is a great story and a really good player, but you do feel like he's probably, Brew's been making this point, he's right. For you to be and listen, they might be the champion this year, but you would think it probably should stack as he's your third best guy. Shea's your best, he's your third, and that team is a juggernaut. Now, Oklahoma City has the profile of a juggernaut. We'll just see if it is that way come the postseason.
I hate that all your skinny skepticism is looking true with both Victor and Chet not playing right now. Like it's a short.
I mean, the Victor thing's weird, and I'm not rooting for it. That's the weirdest. Now, you know what really, but my I don't love skinny athletes take really took a hit by the Jaden Daniels rookie season. I will tell you that. Jaden Daniels rookie season, that was not ideal, but I do. And it's also for any aspiring sports media folks, let me tell you one lesson I've learned. There is no take that has a worse return on investment than I'm worried about this player because I think he might be injury prone. Because if you're wrong, you're wrong. And if you're right, you never get to be like, told you so. Like, I can't look at any of these injuries and go on TV like, what'd I tell you? Jaden Daniels cracked ribs 4 weeks in. Oh, Chet, first summer league game, LeBron bangs it. Like, I just have to be like, I just have to be like, yeah, that sucks. Even though in my brain, I'm like, I knew this was going to happen. Yeah. It's just a bad ROI on take.
Speaking of Shea, I saw it on TV. Could you explain to people right fast your explanation for why it is that Jokic can't be the MVP this year because he was the MVP last year? Because I want to make sure it sounds as wrong when I hear it out your mouth as I thought it did when I saw you say it on TV.
It's very simple. Luka Doncic last year had 34, 9, and 10 were his numbers. He had a 73, 10, and 7 game. He played a ton, was utterly dominant, and his team won 50 games. Jokic's team won 57, and the MVP voting was 79 first-place votes for Joker, 4 for Luka. And it was because, listen, they're both having A-level seasons. And even though Luka averaged more assists, 8 more points per game, and only 3 less rebounds, that we have to reward the winning. We must reward the winning. And then this year, people are like, well, even though Oklahoma City is 11 games clear of the field with only one star player on the team, and that star player is going to win the scoring title, wow, look at Joker's numbers, which are almost as good as Luka's last year. And so so last year, Luka was my MVP pick, which means this year, by that same logic, it should be Joker. But because Joker won it last year, and I don't have a vote, the voters are telling me that the standard is what Shea did. And this is the 4th time with the same player that we're saying, yeah, the whole history and Preston of it, fuck that. So, and that's an outrage. He is the best player in the league. He is the only player in the league you could put on the Nuggets, and I would think they can win the championship. Like, just you remove him. There's no one else. Not Giannis, not Shea, not Luka, none of them. I give him, and I was wrong about how great of an all-time great he is, and you were right. But we can't keep fucking playing Calvin ball with MVPs where it's this year's criteria, as it happens, rewards one player, and it's Joker, and next year's criteria will be very different, but it will reward one player, and it's Joker. That's bullshit. I just want consistency in how we give out the award. That's all.
Well, I will hit you back with 2 things here, right? Now,
Please.
how many MVP votes did you say Jokic had last year? 74?
Jokic got 79 first place votes. Luka got 4. Shea got 15.
See, there you go. You got to where I was going. I would have rolled out with you if Luka had even finished second. He didn't even finish second in the voting last year.
No.
Shea finished second. Like, the argument is, if it was that we're going to reward winning, then Shea would have been that guy, I think, to win the MVP if that were the case. To me, the stat that maps most closely to MVP, and my regular people who listen to this know what I'm going to say, it's win shares per 48 minutes. You can go year after year after year since the 1980s, and there are a couple of exceptions there. Derrick Rose in 2011, those Steve Nash years, Russell Westbrook the year after Kevin Durant left. Those are the exceptions. Otherwise, it maps pretty much out there. Jokic for the 5th straight year. By the way, Jokic is the all-time leader in this category. Jokic for the 5th straight year is leading the league in win shares per 48. I thought that they decided to give it to Embiid because people started complaining, and Embiid played well enough down that stretch that it was, okay, we could go ahead and do this now if we want to. But the best player in the NBA is playing better than anybody else. Shea, interestingly enough, has a very similar win shares per 48, which is in, both of them is in rarefied air that's in the neighborhood of the best LeBron James seasons, the best Michael Jordan seasons, the best Wilt Chamberlain seasons, the best, what's the other guy's name? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like, this is the space where those two guys are in. I see the argument for Shea if you want to. I just felt like using the 3rd place finisher from the year before as the counterfactual, where I still thought that Jokic had a better year than he did last year than Luka did.
But so here's I guess the counterpoint to that. Last year, the top 2 finishers were the 2 teams that tied for the best record in the West. And So here, this is my frustration. And it's where, and I do, listen, at one point in time, I was fairly classified as a Nikola Jokic skeptic. I went on, some would say hater, but whatever. I have to own it because I was dead wrong about where he actually was going to stack up historically. But I think that what I had said always was I want to see him go on a legendary playoff run. The moment, and some people were like, well, I didn't need you. Why did you need to see it? I didn't. Okay, credit to the folks who saw it before I did. But since he did that, I have not moved the goalposts. Since he went on that run, I have given him all his flowers. But what is frustrating to me is this. He won his first MVP rightfully the way a lot of guys have won it. A great player who finally has his greatest season. And the majority of MVP winners win their first MVP way before they do any real winning. Fine. No problem. I actually think that year I might have been a Chris Paul MVP guy. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter.
You were a Chris Paul MVP guy. Yes, you were.
Yeah. Oh, that is right. And then all Chris Paul did was, I think, sweep Joker out of the playoffs and get to the finals. But neither here nor there. Now we'll get to the point that I'm trying to make. The next year, Joker had an unbelievable year, and his team was the 6th seed. And we were like, well, there's been one MVP in the last 30 years who wasn't a top 3 seed. It was a terrible MVP decision in hindsight. It was Russell Westbrook's triple-double year. Forget the precedent of winning. We'll give it to Joker. And I was like, I don't love that. The next year, it was, you know what? Despite the fact that every single 3-time MVP ever has already been a champion, or been to multiple finals, and despite the fact that we've only had one 3-in-a-row MVP in the last 50 years in the NBA, we're going to give it to Joker again. And then oddly, I think Kendrick Perkins somehow scared the whole media out of voting for him. And so he didn't get it. I didn't think that. I didn't agree with Perk that it was a race thing. But regardless, we were going to change the rules again. And now this year, last year we said, even though Luka is having statistically a wholly unprecedented season, he's not even a candidate. When you get 4 out of 100 votes, and one of the 4 came from Broussard, who I had to convince every single day on TV, to do it. You're not even. Luka was dismissed as a candidate because his team didn't win enough, and now this year, you have a guy who's going to win the scoring title, whose team's going to win 67, 68 games. And we're like, and some folks are like, no, actually, did you see the 30-20-20 game? When I saw again, Luka have a 60-20-10 game and no one gave a shit. And so it just feels to me like there is and Michael, I got to listen to Michael Malone every night. Just basically be like, if we're not willing to switch out Jerry West's silhouette for Nikola Jokic, we don't respect the game. Like, enough, man. And so that's where I stand. What you won't hear me saying is, man, and this is what I was saying when we were looking at him winning his 3rd. Here's the list of guys with 4 MVPs. He's not in their class because he is in the class-ish of the guys who have 3 and 4. He's definitely in the class of the guys with 3 MVPs, and he might one day be in the class of guys with 4 MVPs. And so that's not the argument. It's just, it's the same. This is the last point I'll make. It's how I felt about NFL MVP this year, Bomani, when last year in 23 season, everyone was like, nobody thinks Lamar Jackson is having the most statistically MVP-ish season. But he's on the best team. He's had big moments. A lot of his value can't be quantified. He's the league's MVP. And then this year, a lot of the same folks, it seemed like, were like, you know what? Forget that whole best team, best record thing. Have you seen Lamar's stats? And it looked like he was going to win the MVP from Josh Allen. It felt to me like in the NFL, the last 2 years, the MVP should either have been Lamar and then Josh, which is what it ended up being, or 2 years ago, Dak or Purdy, oddly, because people loved his year, but call it Dak and then Lamar. It didn't seem like there was a consistency for Lamar than Lamar. I feel like The last two MVPs should have either been Luka last year and Joker this year, but if it was Joker last year, it should be Shea this year. That's all.
I get your point. I will say this, and this is how we bring us two together before we go to the break. In my lifetime, I've got 3 guys that should have won 5 straight MVPs at any point. Michael Jordan, LeBron James from 2008-09 through 2012-13, and the best player in the NBA right now, Nikola Jokic. Like,
before you go to break, can I say something just to get your response to it? Because before we leave this, do you think it's valid at all that I feel had either of those guys done that, I would be more open to this? That like if the precedent had been set, hey, if you are head and shoulders the best player in the league and you have a great season, you're the league MVP, then I would have so much less pushback than what the precedent has been set in the NBA is kind of the opposite, which is each MVP is harder to win than your last. Like whatever the standard when your first is here, and then it gets harder and harder and harder.
Yeah, I'll say this though. I think the precedent argument is a little trickier as we have leaned a little bit more into statistics and advanced ones in figuring this out.
Fair.
Case in point in baseball, the year that Felix Hernandez won the Cy Young Award, and I think he won something like 13 or 14 games.
Yep.
Right? There had been an intellectual paradigm shift of sorts, right? Because my pushback against everybody else that's gotten 3 MVPs in a row, or 3 MVPs had already won championships, is that it felt almost like it used to be back in the day that you could win Defensive Player of the Year and be second team all defense because the coaches voted for the all defense team and the media voted for Defensive Player of the Year. Like the standard was established by 2 different things. And so I could see how those things came like out of concert. That was the only thing. But I will say this. You sounded a lot more reasonable me hearing you saying it right now than in the little clip that I saw on the internet. I just saw your cape flowing in the wind for Luka, and I was just like, oh no, I can't have this. See, this is why reasonable people disagree in public. It can still work. We gonna sell some stuff and come back. This episode is presented by Perplexity. Perplexity is an AI-powered answer engine that searches the internet in real time to deliver fast, clear, high-quality answers. Unlike legacy search engines that respond with a list of links, Perplexity skips straight to the answers you need, explained in everyday language that's easy to understand with sources and citations. All right, now, Sean, how do you use Perplexity, especially when it comes to the right time?
You know, I plan on using it all throughout the show, especially when you need questions answered or stats confirmed. But, say you're curious about a specific topic from our If You Haven't Heard segment, for example, the growing cost of eggs, I can simply ask Perplexity, what is the percentage increase on the price of eggs in 2025? And it'll give you a detailed answer in seconds, complete with links to the latest sources, so you can easily verify information or dive deeper. And by the way, the current answer as of today is 22% since the beginning of the year, with the potential for a 41% increase by the end of the year.
Well, that's not ideal, but incredible that we got to answer so quickly. Discover faster, more reliable search with Perplexity today. Download the app or ask Perplexity anything at perplexity.com. Shout out to Dash Pass and their members-only deal for the 24-25 NBA season. They swoosh, you save. When any player scores 50 or more points in a game, Dash Pass members save 50% on an order up to $10 off. Sign up for Dash Pass and save more all year round with $0 delivery fees and reduced service fees on eligible orders, plus exclusive perks like this one. Use the promo code NBA50 the day after the 50-point game during the 24-25 NBA regular season from noon to midnight. Valid for Dash Pass members only from noon to midnight the day after any player scores 50 points or more in a single game during the 24-25 regular season.
That's right. As a reminder, the offer is live at noon to midnight the day after the game, and that is exclusive to Dash Pass members. 50% off one order, up to $10 off. Offer valid from 9 a.m. Pacific time through 11:59 p.m. Pacific time after a 50-point performance in any game during the NBA season on orders placed at participating merchant locations. Valid only in the United States. Maximum value of discount is $10. Discount applies to subtotal only. Does not apply to fees, taxes, and gratuity. Not valid for pickup. Limit 1 per person. Not valid for the purchase of alcohol. Fees, taxes, and gratuity still apply. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Use promo code NBA50 to redeem.
All right, we're back on the right time with Nick Wright. I saw that on your podcast. You talked about LeBron James pulling up on Stephen A. in the third quarter during a timeout of a Lakers game. Hold on. While Stephen A. Smith was sitting with Ari Emanuel and Larry David. What a series of Mad Libs that I have just
favorite
put together.
team. Rooting for his favorite team, only to see that team get walked down and LeBron hit the biggest shot of the game directly right in front of him, then beat him in overtime. Yeah, that one. That game.
So, what were your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts have now expanded because Stephen A. went on, the modern Frost Nixon, Gills Arena to really get pressed on this. To really have to make sure there's not any, wait, does this really match up? And talked all this shit. And I think this entire thing has been so wholly misrepresented. I find it infuriating. And I've said it before, I will say it again. Not only do I have a relationship with Stephen A., I have a very good relationship with Stephen A. I have been on the record for years when things have popped up and people have taken shots at him, that his resume of how he got to where he is, he fucking earned it and put in the and even to this day, as a guy who works a lot of hours, I can't imagine. So I have real respect and personal affection for him as a broadcaster and a person. I just think he is so wrong on this. And I think the conversation surrounding this is so incorrect on the facts. LeBron James did not check Stephen A. about Stephen A. criticizing Bronny James, the basketball player. LeBron James checked Stephen A. about Stephen A. criticizing LeBron James, the father. And that's totally in bounds. And this idea that LeBron did it in the wrong way, when here is the timeline of events. Stephen A., after Bronny, earned minutes by how he's been playing in the G League, got minutes in a Sixers game, and played terribly. Stephen A. went on TV and said, "I'm begging you as a father, LeBron James, put an end to this." LeBron's agent then called Stephen A. and told him, "Hey man, that was out of line." And I wasn't a party to that conversation, but I think added the context of, you got to recognize there is multiple real levels of sensitivity when you're questioning LeBron James as a father, given his lack of a relationship with his own father and all of that. Stephen A. then took that call, went on his pod, and made fun of him while playing behind him highlights of Bronny struggling against the Sixers. Stephen A. also has been on the record for years. "I'm at the games. Anyone can come talk to me if they have a problem with what I say." So LeBron, first opportunity he got, talked to him, said it, and then went on and played. The next day, Stephen A. was very kind of reserved and now has done a media tour about it. I don't get it. Like, what was the proper way to go about, you questioned me as a father, and I think you're using my son as a cudgel to come at me. Like, there has been this whole recreation that Stephen A. was hypercritical of Bronny, the basketball player, and LeBron went up to him and said, "You can't do that." That's not what happened. And so This one really, like, it irritates me the way it's been covered, and it irritates me that there is now, I think, a disingenuous retelling of how this went down.
So, in the last, I guess we'll call it 9 months, because the draft was about 9 months ago, I was very critical and remain so of the way that Bronny coming into the league was being handled. I really, to this day, still have a problem with the way we as a media covered the idea of him being drafted as though it was an accomplishment for the kid when it was not. It was a flex for his dad, right? And I firmly believe you can't be proud of something that you didn't really like go out there and get. And we acknowledge that under those circumstances, he's not getting that place if he's not LeBron's son. And I think that a lot of fathers, and I think for black fathers, these are about the particular sensitivity about fatherhood. I think it's there, and I think that, let me hold off on that one because that gets to be a little bit too complex. But I do raise a broader question about when it is and is not okay to question what somebody's doing as a father when they publicly want everybody to know what kind of father they are. And when I say that, I mean, take Marv Marinovich, for example. Now, Marv Marinovich is an extreme example. For those of you who are too young to know who Todd Marinovich is, Todd Marinovich was a quarterback who played at USC, who was raised from youth to be an NFL star. And it's crazy stuff. Like Marv tied the kid's right hand up so that he would become left-handed, for example. We are okay in extreme
For the
cases
younger
like
audience,
those.
just imagine whoever the hell Baby Gronk's dad is. Like,
Yes.
that's just,
Yes.
it's just something like that without social media is what I imagine. But go ahead.
Yeah, and Tom Marinovich, who looked like the redheaded Pete from Pete and Pete, he wound up on drugs and other stuff. Like, it didn't work out very well for the young man. But we will question the parenting that took place there. Like, we have no issue with it. Yes. I know that for me, when I observed the LeBron thing, I really observed it in the context. And I think it's something you can relate to, too, because where you from, your parents are somebody, is being the son of somebody where people know who you are by name when you pull up, right? And how difficult it can be to kind of chart your own path and get there. And it felt to me like what was being done was producing a documentary in real time, and that this was a scene in the documentary. And I did not believe that any of these things served Bronny. I'm still not sure the way that they're dealing with him serves him, but I think it's fair to raise a criticism about the role that dad has in this if it feels like what dad is doing might serve dad a little more than it actually serves the young man. And so it's funny because you saw that stuff on Stephen A's podcast. I had not seen that. The criticisms I'd seen Stephen A. Smith make, I thought were criticisms of LeBron and not criticisms of Bronny. And so I was skeptical of the idea of pulling up on Stephen A. and being like, don't do that with Bronny, when it felt like he was being critical of LeBron. But what you talk about is something that's very important, which is when you get out here saying one thing and they playing yakety sax B-roll of the kid behind you. Oh, no. That one ain't going to go over.
That's not going to go over when you and so here's the other piece that I would say to you or to anyone that, and I'm not saying you said this directly, but in general, that said that basically the draft pick was a farce. Can we check the score on that now? Can we now, when you look at the NBA rookies, 70 have played minutes this year, that Bronny is somewhere between 48th to 56th in minutes, points, assists, and steals in the NBA, which is obviously not great, but it is also obviously exactly where you would hope the 55th pick of the draft came out, when he's averaging 22, 5, and 5 in the G League regular season, which is a little above average for all of the second round picks. Can we now say, hey, as it turns out, this young man who was a 4-star, was never a legit 5-star recruit, but was a legit 4-star recruit who suffered cardiac arrest and basically lost his freshman year because of it. And that kind of gets, that got lost to the history of, look at his college stats. And that guy who was a legitimate fringe NBA prospect with some size concerns, some size red flags and some kind of character and intangible green flags, if you will, is playing exactly to his draft position. And that's not because of help from dad. And so would he have gotten the drafted without being LeBron's kid? No. But it was, to me, if LeBron had retired 3 years ago and was totally disconnected from the NBA, if I were running a team, it's like, hey, there's 3 picks left in the draft. We're looking at the following people. And one of them's like, oh, one of those people literally has the greatest player ever's DNA, and maybe we could take a flyer on him. Okay, I don't think that's a waste of a draft pick. The other piece of it is that I thought was unfair, and this is about Bronny the player, not about LeBron the father, was no one is tracking how any of these second round picks do, except for like team-based super into it podcasts. And so if we are going to do that because he's LeBron's kid, which is the only reason we're doing it, we can't only do it when he has 5 awful minutes against the Sixers. That is, to me, unfair. But being a pro athlete, you sign up for the unfairness of it. What I really don't like, though, is if I had been very adamant that I think somebody who's in the public eye is cheating on their wife, been like, you know what I mean? And that person then publicly checks me, and then I go and talk about it, and I act like that's not what it was about. It was like, oh, this guy can't stand that I criticized, how well he plays receiver in the NFL. Like, this guy doesn't want to hear it. It's like, no, that's not what this was. And I also don't know what the idea that this would have been so much better handled by a phone call, maybe, but maybe also it was just something. Let me say the last thing on this. I don't think this was premeditated by LeBron. I actually think it was spur of the moment. I think it was.
He's more calculating than that.
He's right there. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go tell him, you know what I mean, how I feel. And I also think that we, as kind of opinion shapers in the media, need to be honest about our own biases and affiliations. Everybody knows that, because I've been very open with it, that I have a real friendship and personal relationship with Maverick, that I have a business relationship to a degree with Rich, and that I have a relationship with LeBron. I've been very, very clear about that. I think if you are going to be the most prominent member of sports media and not be forward-facing with, we talk about this GOAT debate a lot. One of the guys involved texts me on the regular, and the other guy refuses to talk to me and has refused to talk to me for the better part of a decade, and that might color part of my commentary. I don't love that. I just don't love it.
No, I think that's all fair. The thing I'd push back on, though, is that I don't think that the way people look at Bronny is just because he's LeBron's son. I do think it has a lot to do with the way LeBron has handled his son, all the way back to that tweet 3 years ago or 2 years ago when he was talking about my son's better. Like, I think my son's better than half the league.
So that tweet was a huge mistake. That tweet was a huge mistake. And I think it's the only tweet, one of the only tweets LeBron's ever deleted. Or maybe it's still, maybe it was a different one.
Well, for me,
go ahead.
But for me, that tweet was so funny because I did the Daily Show when that happened, and they asked me about it, and I was like, well, if you think that's true, then bring him to work with you and see how it goes. And then 2 years later, he did. He actually did the thing that was the joke. He was like, fine, I'll bring him on to work, right? Like, and this is making it about what I said just right fast. I think you're right, generally speaking. You could take basically whoever you want with the 55th pick in the draft. Like, that's very often somebody who don't speak no English, who ain't never going to come over to this country, right? Like that pick, you can do whatever it is you want with it, okay. I had such a problem with the way that it was being spun into what felt like a made for Instagram event almost, right? Like we turn it in this, we show this, we make it a big thing. Oh, this is a great story. Let me tell you what'll be a great story. After what has happened with Bronny and the way that this year has started, if he, not to sound like an old person, picks himself up by the bootstraps and turns himself into a real live NBA player, I'll be right out there with everybody else that thought that this was such a beautiful thing when I did find it to be an orchestrated farce at the beginning. Because then we're talking about you were down, you accomplished, you stood, because that's what we want to see these cats do out here. You stood tall in the face of it, and you made yourself into something, because at this point, his daddy can't do nothing for him, right? If he does that, I'm going to be right there. But once such a production was made of it on the front end, then yeah, he was going to get all that scrutiny on the back end, because all of that, like, look, you work with your son. You didn't make him the co-host on First Things First, right? The steps that we take before this. Dwayne Wade drafted his son in the G League with the team that he owns with the Jazz, for example. I think the kind of ham-fistedness of the way that this was presented in the beginning, I think is what got the skepticism, not simply that LeBron's his dad.
So listen, the only thing I would add to that is how much of, and we'll never know this, how much of the pageantry and all of that had to do with the fact that this kid's heart stopped 9 months before he was drafted? Would it all have existed, or there is a real made-for-TV moment element of a guy who might be the greatest player ever, played long enough that a kid that we all saw as a baby on the sidelines grew up, and then in a freak occurrence almost died, and then is on, draft eligible. And by draft eligible, what I mean is he had to be at some point. I think we agree on this, maybe we don't, that if Bronny was never anywhere close to a second-round pick caliber player, it wouldn't have happened. I did think it was a great story, and I'll tell you this, and this is where I think people are unfair to LeBron. If in 15 or however long it would have to be, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is, Cannon Curry has is a college basketball player and declares for the draft, and the Warriors spend one of the last picks on the draft on him, even though he's not on anyone else's board, that will be universally applauded. People be like, that's awesome. How cool is that? They wouldn't be like, oh, this is bullshit. You're costing a guy a spot. Like, there is stuff when it comes to LeBron, things we've never cared about before, we claim to care about. You saw it this All-Star game when people are like, why won't someone think about Norman Powell's feelings in this? Nobody gives a shit about Norman Powell getting called up for the All-Star game, but everyone pretended they did because it was an opportunity to take a shot at LeBron. That's how I feel about it.
Okay. I will just say this, and maybe this is just for me. LeBron, in what is in effect the last year of his contract, he has a player option for next year, but this is in it. And I mean, let's be honest, he ain't passing up no money, but still, he is in the last year of his contract. That young man was not ready to play in the NBA based on what we saw at Southern Cal. It felt very much like hurry up and get to the league while dad's still in the league so that we can have this moment here in the league. It felt very somewhere between choreographed and contrived. And I think that lots of people would have gotten this same level of skepticism from it. And I'm just saying this to infuriate you. I know Michael Jordan never would have done this. And if he had, he'd have been destroyed as boy in practice every day. Every day.
That's all true. And again, I'm not into questioning people's parenting, but I wonder how those Jordan kids are
Oh,
doing.
I
They're not in
am.
the
I'm
news,
big
are
into.
they?
I'm big into questioning people's parenting. I got to deal with people's. I got to deal with people's fuck up kids all the time. Hell yeah, we need to do more. Like yours, I observe your parenting. It is amazing. You know how I feel about your kids and family. They like my family. I think they're wonderful. And on the other hand, I see these other fuck ups in the streets every day. We need to normalize questioning people's parenting. My God, the only time we do it is when their daughters be out here in the streets.
By the way, if you would like to hear more of my very strong, totally unbiased, uncompromised feelings on the potential real issues with nepotism in America, particularly in sports America, feel free to listen to the What's Right with Nick Wright podcast, co-hosted by my son, Demonze Bird, whose qualifications when the podcast first started for doing the job was I wanted him to do it with me. And
Well, that's a reasonable job for him to have. That is my point. You gave him the kind of job that you're supposed to give your son when you put him on. You didn't put him up there with Parkins on breakfast ball. You had him there with you at
here's
that
the thing.
level.
You're right, I didn't. But if Fox had told me I could, maybe I'd have been like, I'll give it a shot. If they had given me the opportunity, maybe I'd have been like, you know what? Who knows? Maybe it'll be something special. So I'm aware of my own hypocrisies or biases. And because of that, I disclose it to the audience. They can judge how they feel.
That is Nick Wright. Check him out. First things first. What's Right with Nick Wright podcast. Great. We worked really hard to make this happen, my brother. I appreciate you joining us.
No, yeah, listen, I appreciate and I apologize we haven't been able to make it happen before. We'll do it more often. You know how much I love you. Family misses you. You're traveling everywhere. I want to hear about the trip. And thank you to your great producers. I'll see you guys soon.
Oh yeah, I got a big one next week too. Like we checking out boxes these days, baby. You just went on one that I'm mad you got to before I did. I got to figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, good seeing you, Bo.
Hey man, you too. Sean, is there anything from Perplexity during the show?
Yeah, Bo. For me especially, I wasn't aware of the Todd Marinovich story, and so I want to pull it up here. So basically, I was unaware. I heard you and Nick talking about it. It's very fascinating, and every article they're summarizing it's a tall tale of what the dangers of a Tiger parent or whatever, whether it's Tiger Woods' dad or other athletes. But this is crazy. He introduced him to a strict diet devoid of salt, sugar, processed foods. He was fed just lean meats and raw milk from birth. He was trained on balance beams before he could walk and was made to run 10 miles by the age of 10. He never had a Big Mac or an Oreo. Fascinating enough, his high school success actually worked. He went to Mater Dei or Capistrano. He went to USC on a full ride. First team All Pac-10, made the NFL draft, and obviously the aftermath of that you mentioned it briefly, the struggles of drugs and the torn relationship. But it is fascinating that the relationship has been repaired, but it is a great look at what can go wrong when a dad is this intense with their son.
Somebody said, by the way, and thank you, Perplexity, they lost respect for me. They lost respect for me with my last take. I'm assuming that take that he's talking about is me talking about questioning people's parenting. Hey, man, just because you a little slow on the draw don't make you special, man. Like, all y'all want to get patted on the back just for being somebody's daddy. No, that is not enough. Some of y'all are really bad at it, and I don't blame you for being bad at parenting. It's not like you get to practice before you actually do it, but stop lying. Some of y'all suck. But ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do this here 3 times a week. That was Sean Yu. He handles everything behind the scenes. Thank you, sir. Remember, follow The Right Time, subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to think that you're a mediocre father. Take it easy. Yeah. Yeah, no, it helps because Nick's got his thing cracking on YouTube.